Hi, I'm Bill Catteright, President of the National Retiree Legislative Network, the NRLN, and the American Retiree Education Foundation, the AREF. And I'm your host for our 2022 podcast series titled Creating a Better Life for Retirees, brought to you by millions of retirees from over 400 U.S. companies, private and public organizations, and individuals that I and NRLN volunteers work for every day. You can link to our videos and podcasts from the NRLN homepage at nrln.org. Look for us on our website, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram to see the scheduled dates for upcoming series episodes. You'll learn current facts and hear from guest speakers about the political power plays to end Medicare by 2030, and learn how many in Congress want to strip Social Security eligibility and benefits. Learn the latest about pension reform and hear more about lowering prescription drug prices, as well as other topics affecting all seniors over age 50. Send us emails at contact@nrln.org or phone us at 866-360-7197 to ask us questions, offer comments, suggest topics of interest that you want us to talk about on future episodes. So I hope you'll find today's episode informative and useful. Thank you very much for your time and enjoy the episode. Good evening. I'm Bill Catteright, your podcast host for this episode called the 2022 Year-End Legislative Push, plus our legislative agenda for 2023, and ACO REACH is coming in 2023 also. Joining me today are Ed Beltram, NRLN's VP of Communications, and Allison Parker, NRLN's Director of our Registered Lobbyist, NR Lobbyist in Washington, D.C. Allison is an attorney and has served on the Hill and has much experience working with companies and advocate groups for several years. So welcome, Ed and Allison.
Thank you, Bill.
And welcome, everybody. I think that it's important to note that Ed invited you all by email to watch this episode. He asked you to send us questions in advance, and he will ask Allison and me to answer them at the end of this podcast. So stay tuned. In addition, if you would like to ask questions after today's episode, please email them to Ed at the contact information location on the banner below. If we don't answer your questions in this episode, we're going to respond by email at the beginning of our next episode. So don't worry, we'll get the message to you again. You go to our homepage at www.nrln.org and sign up on the website homepage to get emails. And we'll send you information, and you return back to us, of course, your email address to get to the next podcast episode where we'll post the date and time for you to work with. So in this episode, we'll discuss important pending legislation that, if passed this year, will benefit NRLN members. And Allison will also review our legislative agenda planning for 2023. Then later, I'll update you on Medicare privatization and the latest Medicare privatization threat. Allison, the floor is yours.
Well, thanks, Bill. I appreciate it. So thank you to everyone who's joining us tonight. And I wanted to let you know we've had a busy year at the NRLN, working on a number of issues. We have quite a few issues that are, before Congress right now. So tonight I'm just going to review those with you. And again, if you have any questions after I'm done, feel free to email me and I'd be happy to get back to you. So one issue that we've been working on actually for a couple of years now is recoupment. So what is recoupment? Recoupment is when a company tries to recoup or claw back or recover overpayments that they made because of their miscalculation of benefits. And the issue that we really have with this is that they can do this as of right now, no longer how long it's been. It can be in 20 years, they've been paying the wrong payment to the retiree. And then one day they discover it and they say, oh, you know what, you owe us this money back. And this isn't fair to the retiree because it's been a long time, but also the retiree doesn't have any participation in calculating what their benefit will be. It's done by the company. And the retiree has relied on this, made financial decisions, whether it's buying a car or a house, helping a grandchild. And then all of a sudden for a company to come back and say, oh, guess what? We made a mistake and you owe us money. And in some cases, it can be up to 20. It can even be 60,000 in some cases we've seen. And there's no parameters. So they can say, and we need you to pay us back within a month, 3 months. So, and clearly this is unfair. So what we've done is we've been working with the Hill on how do we address this? What's a fair solution for not only the company, but for retirees that are sort of held captive to this process? So what we've come up with is first, the legislation that's being considered on the Hill that we've advocated is there's no fiduciary duty to recoup. The company can just simply adjust retirees' pension back to what it should have been all along, but not worry about the extra money that they've paid to the retiree. So, but it still allows the option for the company to recoup if they want to. But what we've done is we're advocating for some parameters on that to make it a little bit more fair. So they just don't have this open-ended where they can recoup 20 years of overpayments. So in addition to making it clear that there's no obligation to recoup, what we have advocated for on the Hill is that if they choose to recoup, it must be done within 3 years of the initial overpayment. So that way they need to find it quickly. It's not going to be a 20-year building up of overpayments. The next thing we are advocating for is if they choose to recoup, they can only recoup 10% of the overpayment per year. So it's not a financial burden on the retiree. And one thing I should mention is not only are they recouping if they go this route, but the retirement payment is adjusted to the correct amount. So this way, it's sort of a double whammy to the retiree, right? To have an adjustment, but then also have to pay back. So this is why you can't do 10% more that they have to pay back over a year. And the last element that we're working on is if a retiree passes away during this recoupment process, the company cannot go after the beneficiary of the retirement of the pension. So those are the 4 things that we're working on with the Hill. And again, all of these bills I'm going to address are things that we're trying to get done this year. And there's going to be what we believe a large spending bill at the end of the year to wrap up a lot of loose ends. And we're working on getting all of these bills into this end of the year package. The next bill that I wanted to address is called the Susan Muffley Act. And what does this Susan Muffley Act do? Well, if everyone will recall, in 2009, General Motors filed for bankruptcy. And at that time, the pension plans for the salaried and union workers of Delphi, which was a division of General Motors, were transferred to the PBGC. And at that time, their benefits were cut as much as 70%, which is devastating to any retiree. And then politics got involved, as happens in DC, and the federal government, not wanting to pick a fight with the unions, chose a winner, and they chose the unions, and they made the union retirees whole, but they let the salaried employees of Delphi remain with all their up to 70% of their benefits cut. So was this fair? Absolutely not. I mean, everyone would agree on that. So what this bill does is it remedies the situation, and it makes the salaried retirees of Delphi whole by giving them a lump sum payment of the difference of what they have received and what they should have received. And essentially what this does is it provides equity between the union workers and the salaried workers of Delphi, and makes both of them will end up being whole. So, and one thing I do want to note is that the United Auto Workers Union is actually supporting this bill as well, because they realize the injustice that was done to the salaried employees. The next issue I wanted to address is called the health care tax credit. Some of you are probably aware of this. It's also HCTC. And so the health care tax credit helps retirees cover the cost of health insurance if they are retired and their pensions have been taken over by the PBGC. This tax credit expired on 12/21. And so since the expiration, we've been working to get it renewed. And here we are close to 12/22. It has not been renewed yet. Hence the push to get this done at the end of the year in the end of the year package. And so the NRLN is not only advocating for it to be extended or reauthorized, but also we're asking that it be permanently authorized so we don't have to do this every year. And also that it be increased. Right now it's paying at 72.5 or reimbursed at 72.5, and we are advocating for 80%. So that's one other item that we're working to have addressed before the end of the year. Another issue is called Section 420 transfers. And all of you may not be aware of what this is, but this is a great provision that allows companies whose pension plans are well funded to use excess funding to pay for health benefits and life insurance. Well, this provision expires at the end of the year, so it's very important that we get it extended. So we have proposed that it be extended, but also we're advocating that they lower the threshold from 125, which it is currently. So it has to be 125% funded, and then anything over that, they can use those funds over 125%. We're advocating that it be lowered to 110% because clearly 110% pension plan is very well funded. And these are benefits that retirees want. So this allows the company to not only to help their retirees. So we're advocating anything over 110% would be used. The companies could tap into those funds to use them only for benefits for the retirees, such as life insurance and health insurance. And then the last issue that I wanted to address right now is that we've been working on for this year is the annual funding notice. Most of you are probably aware of this. It's something you receive from the company you used to work for that gives you a picture of how well funded your pension plan is. The problem is, though, that it really doesn't give you a good picture. And why do I say that? Because they use calculations that they do at the beginning of January of each year. Yet you don't receive this AFN until 16 months later, so a year and 4 months. So when you get this, it really doesn't give you what every retiree wants to know. How well is my plan funded? Well, this doesn't give you that picture because the data is 16 months old. So we've recommended or been advocating on the Hill that they make some common sense solutions. And one would be to use year-end valuations when drafting up the AFN. So instead of doing the valuations in January, you would do them at the end of the year in December, and then the AFN goes out in April. So the calculations are 4 months old as opposed to a year and 4 months. The other thing that we would like to see done with the AFN, again, so it serves a good purpose for not only the retirees, but the company, because they want you to know what's going on with the pension, or that's their obligation. And this way they avoid phone calls to the company, how well is my pension funded, is we've recommended that they take the information that's spread throughout the AFN and move it to the front page and put it in a table. And this way, the retiree doesn't have to go searching for this information, and it's right up front and very clear. So what we've recommended is the table would show current in the past 2 years of the number of plan participants, the plan assets and liabilities, the company funding obligations and contributions, the interest rates used to calculate funding levels, the rate of return on plan investments, all over a 3-year period. And we feel like this would be great for retirees, but also for companies, again, because you won't have as many retirees calling the company to see what's going on with their pensions. One thing I want to address, in addition to what we've been advocating for on the Hill, is how do, our legislative agenda, how do we figure out what we focus on during each year? So right now, the NRLN is already focused on 2023, figuring out what are the issues that are most important to retirees and pensioners. And how we do this is it's a little bit of a marathon, because we have all of our associations, which are spread out throughout the company, our chapters and our grassroots teams get together and review what's most important to them and to our members, keeping in mind that we represent over 400 companies. Our members have been in over 400 companies. We have state and government retirees, and 20% of our members are also union workers. So we have a very diverse membership with a lot of different issues that need to be considered when making our priorities. So once this is done, then this is passed on to the Legislative Action Planning Committee and myself and the grassroots team, and we make priorities of what we're going to focus on next year in 2023. And again, this is an annual process. So we've already been doing this for determining what we're going to do for 2023. We don't have any results yet, but I did want to bring up one issue that I know is going to be a big issue for next year. And the issue is de-risking. And many of you have probably already heard of this because it's been in the paper a lot. And this is the process where companies choose to sell off their pension plans to insurance companies. And this is not a good deal for the pensioner or the retiree, because they stand to lose benefits, not from the PBGC, but also if an insurance company chooses or decides not to pay. It's a risky situation. So, and in 2022, there was not a month that went by when we didn't hear about a company doing this. And we expect 2023 to be even worse as far as de-risking. So we've already been on the Hill. We've been working on this. We're developing legislative language to address it. And this will be something that will probably be our top priority next year. And we're already working very hard on it. So I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. So this is all I have at this point. And Bill, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, well, thanks, Allison. Well done. What we'd like to do now is shift a little bit and talk about Medicare Advantage plans. And you've probably heard us say a number of things about them before, and their attempt to take over original Medicare and eventually privatize it. And then there's a new product on the horizon that most people don't know about, and it's called ACO REACH, and it's the product of a continuum, a history of implementation of ACOs that started back very quietly in 2012 and have turned into kind of a monster. And that's the next wave, and that is the wave to privatize what we now know as traditional Medicare, but not where Medicare Advantage plans already exist, but in the remainder of the market. So Medicare Advantage plans, particularly HMO plans, have been underfunding horribly, even though younger and healthier retirees appreciate their initial lower out-of-pocket cost. That's undeniable. And even though Medicare Advantage has achieved a 40% market share of Medicare, they've never performed well or had a year where their cost per enrollee or their quality has been better than original Medicare fee-for-service. And it was approved because insurance companies promised they could perform better. But after 35 years and $500 billion, I guess, in subsidies paid to insurance companies, $57 billion this year alone, and the projection is $100 billion by 2020 per year. MA plans have yet to beat original Medicare in either cost or quality, as I mentioned earlier. Enrollees' experience recently have been that they run into closed networks where they can't get to the doctors they need to get to. Claims are wrongly denied, and once you are in a Medicare Advantage plan, after a year, you can't get to a Medigap plan unless you meet insurability requirements. And on top of that, there have been no quality gains. And so Congress is moving fast in the direction of introducing these new ACO reaches, which we'll talk about in a second. But one of the consequences of Medicare Advantage is that Congress has spent so much money, $1,980 per year this year, for enrollee in Medicare Advantage plans, in extra benefits, premiums paid for, copay and coinsurance subsidies. And those are projected to double to over $100 billion by 2030. So you might imagine that's $2,000 or $4,000 a year. And there are 35 million older beneficiaries in traditional Medicare who are really not entitled to these benefits because they're not in Medicare Advantage plans. And so Congress has created two sets of people, the haves and the have-nots, all in Medicare, A and B. And that's because they've been subsidizing Medicare Advantage plans. You've seen it on TV and brochures and phone calls. They're telling you about you don't have to pay for eye care, hearing, dental benefits, dental drug plan premiums and copays, over-the-counter drugs, air filter changes, carpet cleaning, free rides to your doctor's office, and other benefits. Yet, those of you in fee-for-service original Medicare, 35 billion of you and us, are denied equal treatment by Congress. And this is really a bad situation. And the heat is building because you'll read every day now where they're being attacked for not being effective. And Congress is going to have to do something about it. So they know all this data and the day of reckoning is coming, but rather than retract subsidies and watch insurance companies exit the marketplace because they couldn't survive without these subsidies, what they're doing is doubling down and have created a new accountable care organization called ACO Reach. Well, you're going to hear more about that in our next episode, but we want to give you some information today so that it kind of whets your appetite for learning more. In ACO Reach, more subsidies are going to be doled out to doctors who can be paid more, who are eligible for bonuses, and ACO private ownership can keep up to 100% of the savings, which is the whole purpose of the program, save money for Medicare. But yet the private owners can keep up to 100% of the savings, up to 25% of the total benchmarks. It's unheard of. So outside investors can control 25% of these ACOs. A scary and unexplained feature of the ACO is that while ACOs are supposed to serve traditional Medicare only and not Medicare Advantage plans, they, in fact, some of them now are selling their own Medicare Advantage plans. So it's very confusing, and there has to be a lot sorted out. I'm not sure the industry even knows exactly how this is going to be introduced in January, and Congress is doing absolutely nothing to even study the matter. They're kicking the can down the road, so to speak. So we expect ACO Reach, much like Medicare Advantage. We expect enrollees to experience service delays, closure of rural care hospitals, clinics, benefit denials, and more private networks, just bigger, and ultimately total privatization of Medicare if we don't stand up and stop this somehow. So if you haven't heard much about ACOs or ACO Reach, you should sign up to watch NRLN's next podcast episode. For now, though, let's briefly look at the growth story of the ACOs. This is a real eye test, so don't try to read this chart. Suffice it to say that the ACO started in 2012 and 13, and there were about 220 of them. And there were 3.2 million beneficiaries assigned to these ACOs. Today, there are 483 of them and 11 million people in the ACOs. And back when they started the first year, the savings payments to these ACOs was $315 million. In 2020, the latest record of date, the payout was $2.3 billion. So the number of ACOs increased by about 120%, but the payout money increased by over 600%. So as you look at those numbers, it looks like that's a pretty aggressive program, and believe me, it is. So let's look now at where these 483 ACOs are located across the country. The real dark blue areas are those that have 10,000 or more enrollees, or they call them assignees. And the lighter colors, of course, have less. But you can see that it's very pervasive across the whole country, and that when they implement the ACO reaches, which is the next generation of ACOs, in January of 2023, it's supposed to be a 4-year trial, but we're very concerned that it might be a runaway train, and we'll end up with a really bifurcated market, multiple of different plans, far more confusing to the average retiree than Medicare Advantage versus Medicare is today. So that's coming, and we'll give you a lot more detail on this later. ACO reach is for the original traditional market, as I mentioned, and it's for those with Medigap plans. The people with Medigap plans already have the 20% coverage. Basically, one of the questions people ask is, how do I get in an ACO? Well, you can volunteer. If you don't volunteer, and if you're not in Medicare Advantage and your doctor joins an ACO, Medicare actually reviews your claim record, validates the relationship between you and that doctor, and then assigns you or auto-enrolls you in the ACO that the doctor went to. You may not know it because sometimes doctors don't want to tell you, or they're embarrassed to, or they just forget they should. But I know a number of people who didn't know they were in one until they began to explore it. Actually, you can opt out by calling Medicare. You can refuse to have your medical records used by ACOs. And the ACO must advise you annually that you're in one. So you could be in one, but not up to your first year in one. And at the end of that year, you're going to get a notice from them. The law requires they send you a letter. You can find out much more by when you go to your doctor's office. Just check. They're obligated to post a form on the wall of the doctor's office. So you can tell whether you're in one or not if you see that letter, that notification. You do retain your traditional Medicare benefits and provider selection rights in the ACO. However, it's private capital, and we expect a significant reduction in the services provided, and eventually in the benefits provided when they take over. Now, we know Congress will spend all our tax dollars they must to get private business to take over Medicare. That's their aim. They want it off the line item of the budget. You know, retirees grow to be 100 million, or one of every 4 people in this country are going to be over age 65 by the year 2060. Insurance companies know that, and it's happening rapidly, 10,000 people a day. This is a tremendous market for these people, and they won't stop until they can get hold of the lion's share of it. And so this is going to be a long venture, but it's beginning to create lots of problems with service and affordability. ACOs are sustained by provider bonuses and cost-sharing plans, and they're going to increase, not lower, the cost of healthcare. So when privatization fails, and eventually all water rises to the same level and drops to the same level, all these costs that are accumulating, where they're not actually saving money, they're creating more expense, is going to fall on the individual retiree or the beneficiary. And that's what's really concerning down the road for our kids, grandkids, and it's for this country, because it's going to exhaust the earnings power and therefore the purchasing power of those over age 65. To hear a hot critique of the ACO reach, watch our next episode. There'll be much more detail, and we'll know more about them by then. Sign up on the website homepage, and we need your email address to get the podcast episode date and time to you when we set that date. So for now, that concludes my piece, and welcome back, Ed and Allison. And now we're going to hear Ed's questions that he's accumulated from the input from most of you.
Bill, I'll start with one question to you, and then I have two for Allison, and then I'll come back to you again for the last two questions. The first question for you, Bill, is from Joe, a Xerox retiree from Wilmington, New York. He asks us, prior to 1984, Social Security benefits were not taxed. Today, up to 85% of our Social Security benefits are taxed if combined income on a joint tax return is more than $32,000. That threshold has never been adjusted for inflation. Any possibility for legislation to correct this?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Joe. And it comes up every year, as a matter of fact. And nobody likes to be taxed. But of course, this is for high wage earners. And the fact that it's not been indexed or inflation adjusted is not right. And we oppose that. And we do, and we will be discussing that in our legislative agenda process as we've begun it already. The focus on that, of course, it has to be that in the time where there's inflation and everything else going on in the economy, that's something that we should be able to give consumers and retirees a break on.
Okay. Allison, the question for you actually comes from three different people. Comes from Tim, an at-large NLRN member in Sanibel, California. I'm sorry, Sanibel, Florida, and John, an NLRN Delphi Retirees Chapter member in Kokomo, Indiana, and Martha, a telephone company retiree in Whitman, Arizona. The question has to do with the health coverage tax credit that you've briefly touched on. So here's the question. What is the status for legislation either making it permanent or reauthorizing for 2023 the health coverage tax credit, which helps retirees age 55 to 64 cover the cost of health insurance when their pension plans have been taken over by the Pension Benefits Guaranty Corporation?
Thanks, Ed. So, as I addressed earlier, this is such an important provision for those people that are sort of in limbo. They're not eligible for Medicare yet, but they no longer have coverage through their work. So this is something we've been working on all year. And as I said, it expired at the end of last year. The good news is we do have, there's a couple different bills that have been introduced, both on the Senate and the House. Some of those bills just authorize another year of the healthcare tax credit. Some of them want to make it permanent, and that's what we've been advocated. And then some also adjust the tax credit level from 72.5 up to 80. And that's what we're supporting as well. With all that, there's a lot of interest to do this on the Hill. Again, like I said, there's multiple bills, and it's on the House side and the Senate. So I think it has a very good chance of getting in this end of the year spending bill. I would be shocked if this is not one of the provision that actually makes it. So I think there's a lot of momentum to get it done, and I think it probably will be done.
Okay. Allison, the other question for you is from Jody, an at-large member in Rochester, Minnesota. Why has the NLRN issued a number of action alerts asking Congress to pass the Susan Muffley Act to restore full pension benefits to Delphi Salaried Retirees when other retirees have also lost pension benefits in bankruptcy?
Well, thanks, Ed, for that question. We look at pensions as something that retirees have earned, and they sacrifice. They maybe don't get as much pay as they should have. They stay with the same company, so they reach the 20-year or whatever year mark they need to get their pension. And the situation that happened with the Delphi retirees was unique in that the federal government actually stepped in and chose winners and losers. And they chose to make the labor employees whole, and the salaried employees were not. So I think every member of the NRLN and all retirees and pensioners should be concerned, because the federal government should not be stepping in and interfering with people's pensions. That's not their role. And we need to send the message that they should stay, keep the process as it's legislated. And they need to stay out of it and not choose winners and losers and, choose willy-nilly what they're going to do. So again, I think it's very important that all of the members of the NRLN support the Susan Muffley Act, because it sends a message to the federal government that they can't do that.
Yeah, and I might add to that this is the first time I've ever heard of anything like that in the 15 or so years that I've been doing this. It's pathetic. I mean, you have ERISA, the Employee Retirement Income and Security Act, that prescribes how this bankruptcy should proceed through the courts, and that PBGC will eventually take over and protect the plan. To have the government come in and intercede and disrupt that effort is just unconscionable. So yes, we're very much in support of the Susan Muffley Act.
Okay. Bill, I have this question for you from Hector, an IBM retiree in Lancaster, California. And after you answer this first question, I will ask you the second and final question. Here's the first question. What is the difference in regular Medicare Advantage plans versus company-sponsored Medicare Advantage plans? And how might this change? In the future?
Well, the first big difference is that most company plans are negotiated by the companies with the insurance companies. And while they may be titled Medicare Advantage plans, some of them don't look anything like a Medicare Advantage plan when they're done negotiating terms and conditions with the companies. Probably the biggest structural difference is that instead of being HMO plans, most of them are PPO plans. That is, they're not restricted, that you can go see any doctor you want to see. For example, most PPO plans that companies issue take care of that problem. Also, if with a Medicare Advantage HMO plan, for example, you're unable to go to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, or in Phoenix, or down in Florida, or to any other specialty center like Johns Hopkins, MD Anderson, and so forth, where sometimes they're what are called excess charges, because they're premium places to get the best care in the world, are not covered by Medicare Advantage plan. These organizations don't negotiate contracts mostly with the Medicare Advantage plan. They don't get the coverage. But companies, when they negotiate the plans for the retirees, sometimes include those things. So there's that difference. It's a negotiated plan, but it's got the Medicare Advantage label.
Okay. Hector's other question is, once a company de-risks its pension plan, in other words, selling it to an insurance company, is there anything affected retirees can do? And what risk are transferred to retirees?
Yeah, we have been exploring this for probably 10 years. And what we've concluded, and the position we've taken on this, and Allison alluded to it, is that the states have insurance, but their lifetime amount, like $250,000 for your lifetime, not a year, $250,000 for your lifetime. And that therefore it's a national problem. And so that's number one. Number two, after looking at, we've met with the Treasury Department, with the Department of Labor, with PBGC, anyone else in federal government you could think of, and our own attorneys have looked at this matter. So we've put together a proposal, and the core of it is essentially is if you're going to de-risk a plan by annuitizing it through sale to an insurance company, then you and the insurance company, we don't care how you work it out, have to provide for reinsurance that guarantees everyone in it that the insurance, should the insurance company fail, the continuation of the pension takes place and people don't lose a nickel. So that's exactly what our proposal is. It's simple, straightforward, but we got a long road to go here to convince everybody that should be the rule of the road.
Well, that's all the questions I have for you and for Allison.
Thanks.
Well, yeah, thank you, Ed. And thank you very much to our audience for watching. To Allison and Ed, of course, for all their preparation and good work. And to Jacqueline Robinson Lawson, NRLN Social Media Marketing Director, for her guidance. She's behind the scenes making this possible for us and coaches us through the process. So with that, again, thank you and good evening. In order for the NRLN to reach and influence members of Congress on these vital subjects, we need your support. So sign up at nrln.org. Your contact information will be secure and you will receive informative emails, but no junk mail. And most importantly, you will be able to easily send action alert messages to your senators and congressmen that you can edit or create by yourself. So send us emails if you have comments or questions to nrln.org. Phone us at 866-8360-7197 and offer your comments. Suggest topics of interest in income security and healthcare that you would like to learn more about. So now, until next time, you stay safe out there and enjoy your life. And always remember, seniors are special. Thank you very much.